What's going on, Wolfpack Nation? Welcome to another episode of Tuffy Tacos. We have an exclusive one here, y'all. This is not a two-part. This is one time, one shot only. Here with Chris Vernakis, here with Pack of Wolves. Chris, thank you so much for joining us here today, my man.
Leighton, glad to have you. It's a busy time for all of us, but happy to talk about Wolfpack sports and NIL.
Absolutely. No, 100%. I know that, there's kind of really a couple things which, kind of made us decide that, an episode was needed. And obviously right now with the transfer portal being as hot as it ever is. And I think there's never been a time where the transfer portal has been hotter than it is right now. For sure. Thousands and thousands of players going into the transfer portal. But again, this is not really more of a, controversial take episode. It's more of it's just kind of like a, learning about NIL, learning about, what NC State is doing really from the NIL side. So Chris, want to kind of start off, for those who, may not know you, I know that anybody who's involved with Pack of Wolves knows who you are, but maybe some who, haven't given or haven't got involved with Pack of Wolves yet.
Yeah.
Kind of give a little background, kind of who you are, why you're involved with NC State, what got you involved with Pack of Wolves, things like that.
Yeah, and the first question every potential donor asks me, Leighton, is, you went to State, right? And I'm always like, yeah, two-time grad, did my sport management degree at NC State. So I grew up in Durham, went to NC State, undergrad, grad school, stayed in the area pretty much my entire career, but I've had the good fortune to work in sports my entire sports career. So, about a year ago, actually, I'm about to hit my year anniversary next week, so I'm excited about that. A little bit more than a year ago, someone from my current company reached out and kind of expressed interest that they were looking to hire a general manager for Pack of Wolves and would I be interested. And just the thought of being able to help support our student athletes in this way is really exciting to me. I tell this story so much that some people kind of laugh at it now, but when I was a junior at State in sport management, I had a paper and it was like a kind of an opinion piece, if you will. And I wrote it on why student athletes should be compensated for the value that they bring to our university and to our school. Mm-hmm. And, way back when, that was almost 15 years ago, that was a topic that was being discussed. The Ed O'Bannon case was kind of up and coming at that point. It was happening. So we're trying to figure out, this is pre-NIL. This is, should student athletes receive anything above scholarship, room and board, things like that. And I believe really strongly that they should. In the sport management degree, it was populated with a lot of student athletes, and not just football players, men's basketball players, baseball players, track and field, softball, etc. And you look at the schedules that these young men and women have to go through, the hundreds of hours that they dedicate supporting our university, the crazy road trips that the NCAA and ACC puts them on, not to mention now we're going to be going to California for conference games. But the time that they put in and invest in this university deserves compensation based on the revenue that they bring in. I felt strongly about that for decades. So this opportunity comes up. NIL's very new in what we're doing. Pack of Wolves is trying to find its footing. I thought it would be a great fit to use the experience that I had in sports business and apply it to what we do in the business of NIL, because it really is a business and we really try and treat it that way. So I've been a happy general manager the last year. I like to say that NIL years are like dog years, on my gray hairs, but it's been incredibly impactful in what we're able to do with our student athletes, quite honestly. We've got student athletes who, before we came to them with NIL opportunities, couldn't afford a car, couldn't afford an apartment. Their families back home were struggling. These opportunities that we bring to them are impactful to help make ends meet. This is not where our student athletes are going out buying Lexuses and jewelry like everyone wants to portray it. It's really impactful literally on their lives and the lives of their family. And that's what helps Hannah and I get up every day in the morning. That's what we're here for, to serve our student athletes. And that's what we're going to be doing for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I still remember it's funny that, when I was a football equipment manager, my mom, at the time there was talks about NIL and players getting paid, things like that. And my mom, who was adamant, no, there's no way, players get paid. Like, they're getting a free scholarship, or getting all their room and board paid for. That's a fairly equal trade. And I started bringing it up to her. First of all, just kind of reminding her of the hours that student athletes put in, the amount of stress, the amount of time and effort that is put into representing the university at the best of their abilities, but also too of the situations where you may have a grad transfer, for example, who maybe a young man in his early 20s who has a baby, let's say, or let's say has a family that's struggling at home, and they're trying to make money to support for them. That the first thing that comes to their head is trying to go to the NFL or whatever they need to do as quickly as they can, so that way they go make money. Or some of the times they actually have to work jobs on the side beyond just being a student athlete, which I know the NCAA has rules about that. But at the end of the day, I mean, just like you said, I mean, it's just, if he has a baby, if he has a family struggling, to eat, then you got to do what you got to do. So now you give these players an opportunity to do that. And also too, as well, it just kind of incentivizes them to stay in the game a little bit more. Now, I know that we'll kind of talk a little bit more of maybe more of the extremes, which we're seeing right now in the NIL side. But I do want to kind of start off as well with I guess move to before kind of moving down that road of, we have people talk to us all the time being like, what is NIL? Like, what is name, image, likeness? Sure. like that's a term that's used a lot. But what is it? And because I know that a lot of times people say well, I donate to the Wolfpack Club, that goes towards it, right? And so kind of give me Chris, an NIL for dummies. Give me a quick 2-minute course NIL for dummies.
Yeah, and I'll start just by saying those who support the Wolfpack need to continue doing it, because the Wolfpack supports all of our scholarships for over 500 student athletes, all of our facilities. I mean, there's a huge piece that the Wolfpack Club plays in this. So they still need their support to a very high degree from our fan base. What NIL is, in a nutshell to me, is getting our student athletes out in the community. That can be one of a million ways. You've been part of our Meet the Pack events that we've done before, where we've had our men's basketball team, women's basketball team, baseball team, football team, meeting with our fans. That is a huge and awesome opportunity for NIL. That was really the first big event for Pack of Wolves 2 years ago when NIL was made legal. They did the Meet the Pack event for members, got in early, different benefits. It's providing access and exclusivity to those student athletes that, quite honestly, you don't really get otherwise. So there's the Meet the Pack type events. There's commercial opportunities that we provide to them to help support a business or an individual or a company that wants to have a spokesperson, an endorser, a video shoot, radio spot, etc. So, I mean, DJ Burns is the poster child for this, right? He's done Walgreens, he's done Mount Olive Pickles, he's done everything. But people want to use DJ and his brand to be able to promote their company. So when people ask about the commercial side of NIL and what does that mean? It's think about Peyton Manning, not only when he was playing in the NFL, but still today. The guy does 1 million commercials a year, it feels like, still. And that's how you can use someone's name, image, and likeness to propel your company in a way that using Walgreens using him to promote flu shots is going to make that more relatable to somebody who's in the NC State ecosphere. So that's the commercial side. And then really a big and important side for us specifically is the community side. So we've done over 800 engagements in the community with our student athletes this year. We were just looking at those numbers last week. That includes visits to the Boys and Girls Club. And a great story about that, not to harp on DJ, but he is kind of our NIL hero, if you will. He's done multiple NIL events, meet and greets, where he charges a small fee to take photos and sign autographs. He did one in New Bern this summer, raised about $2,000, which is awesome. The community in New Bern, the Wolfpack community, is awesome. So they pay for that. DJ reinvested/donated all of that to buy equipment for the Boys and Girls Club, for the kids in need that are participants at that club. Because we've been there 2 or 3 times this calendar year, and he started to grow relationships with those kids. They play basketball every time they go, as you can imagine. The basketballs are deflated, the hoops, the nets are torn up. He put in $2,000 or $3,000 to be able to give equipment to that group because he had created that relationship with those participants in that community organization. But we've done Gigi's Playhouse, which obviously has a huge affinity to our football program and Coach Doran through his support. We've done the food bank. We've done Habitat for Humanity. We've had baseball out at the Miracle League. It's getting our student athletes able to build their brand, which to me is what NIL is all about. So we're able to educate them on how to build their brand, how to build a social media following, how to create value within themselves, that value that you and I see as fans of NC State athletics, and then being able to propel them to use that to create some new revenue streams. I mean, it can be as simple as hiring a student athlete to do a social media shout out for your company, We have people, I mean, people paid student athletes to attend birthday parties, and anywhere in between. So I
Hmm.
think in a nutshell, NIL is about using our student athletes and the value that they have and through their brand to get out in the community and be a part of what we're doing here in Raleigh, whether that's commercial, fan meet and greets, autograph sessions, community engagements, etc. Like I
Hmm.
said, we're over 100 engagements this year just for Pack of Wolves alone and the 100 student athletes that we work with.
So let me ask this too, because I think this is kind of the other big kind of pushback I get a lot for people donating to NIL Pack of Wolves is people saying that when I donate to Wolfpack Club, I'm donating in the scholarship. Like again, with football, with basketball, there's a certain amount of scholarships you can give out per team. So
Yeah,
meaning when I donate, I'm donating to that scholarship, and then that scholarship is put for that player, or I'm donating for this facilities to get upgrade things like that, which is going to be there no matter who comes and plays. But when I donate to NIL, you're donating towards a foundation which supports players. And so in a situation like what we're seeing right now, where you're seeing players transfer out, some big names, transfer out
yeah,
to, it's publicly known they've gotten a good bit of money, that they feel like, well, like, so this money I just donated, that now this player's leaving, like, so like my money's like it's gone, I
sure.
like being a part of my money's gone, to this foundation that went to this player, like I just don't see like it makes sense where I can donate to something which is like it's going to be there no matter who comes in and fills that scholarship or who comes and uses the facilities. But Pack of Wolves is it's money poured towards an area which goes towards a player that in 6 months may not be here anymore. That's kind of I feel like
Sure.
a frustration for people that ask me. What would you kind of rebuttal to them on that?
I mean, I think if you look at any business, that's the case. And we have to invest in our student athletes or they're going to leave in mass exodus. I mean, any good company has attrition. Apple, Amazon, Tesla, etc. They have great employees leave for other opportunities, right? I think our goal is to be a great company that our employees, because our student athletes are employees of our collective, look at and they know they're going to be taken care of. And in a long term perspective, that's going to limit that attrition. Now,
Mm-hmm.
is someone going to come in and tamper illegally and tell an NC State player that they're going to get XYZ if they come to this school? Sure, that's going to happen. But I think in general, over 2 years, we've seen student athletes go to other schools and underperform and meet, kind of go under the expectations that they might have had going to a Kentucky or an Ole Miss or wherever. So there is also that grass isn't always greener on the other side perspective. But I think what we've realized as a collective, working collaboratively as far as we can, is we've got to keep our core players at NC State happy. We've got to treat them like our top employees at a major company, and we've got to find the compensation and the value that they have. KC Concepcion's a great example. A year ago, you and me and a few other people knew who KC Concepcion was, right? Because he was committed to state. We were excited about that. He's an incoming freshman. We all saw what he did in spring ball, and I think people were excited about that. But I'm not sure anybody quite saw ACC Rookie of the Year, closing in on 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns. Like, it's incredible. So KC has earned more NIL opportunities now. We want that pathway to be there for every student athlete. So if someone says, yeah, I'm pitching in money and these student athletes leave, we're based on the core of NC State football. There are always going to be attrition from any football team, from any sports team, and from any company. But if we can keep our core together, we're going to be successful. And you're investing in the program when you commit to NIL at NC State. Now, obviously, some people build agreements specifically with student athletes. The DJ Burns example, we've had a few people hire Peyton Wilson to do things, which is awesome. Those are two examples of guys that probably aren't NC State without NIL this year. And I don't mean that to say, we threw millions of dollars at them. I mean, Peyton Wilson probably goes pro to start his professional career earlier, given his injury record. And DJ Burns probably similar because he's almost 23. So there's an expiring clock on these guys. But now with NIL, they're able to make compensation for another year or two of scholastic ball, be in a community that they love. I mean, DJ Burns bought a house here, Leighton. Like, he's here. He's all
Wow.
in. And you get that kind of buy-in to the community. That's what you're investing in as a fan. That's what I'm investing in because I'm a member of our collective, as you might imagine. So are you.
Yeah.
That's what you're investing in is the NC State experience for our student athletes. we're going to lose some players in the portal. That's just the business of NIL and the transfer portal these days, as we were talking about before we got on air. But if we can keep the core together, build a really attractive business that other players want to come to. And again, I don't mean we're calling up players at other schools saying, hey, do you want to come play at NC State? They're going to know that they're going to be taken care of when they get here because we're going to build a great reputation, just like all these great Fortune 500 companies. So I guess that's my perspective is, it's tough to look at the individual parts because they're going to change year after year. And that's been the case for collegiate football since the beginning of the NCAA. But what we can look at is the total product that we put on the field and how we're taking care of our student athletes. And if we continue to set the bar high and meet high expectations, I think we're going to be in a really good spot, not only with our players, but also with the fans that are chipping in their hard-earned money to do that.
Amen. Love it. Great answer, Chris. And so I, kind of transitioning about the future, of NIL NC State. I know that, I also get this question all the time, being which NIL should I donate to, Pack of Wolves or Savage Wolves? And I basically say, well, here's the website for both. Go check it out. And
Yep.
I mean, you can't go wrong either way. I mean, at the end of the day, they're both trying to achieve the same exact goal. And then the next question is, well, okay, so why is there two? And I say, well, that's a big question. So, which I'm, definitely don't, and not necessarily looking for you to answer, Chris, but I mean, I do want to kind of ask, what is the, what does the future look like in terms of NIL for NC State? Is there potential of it coming
it's
together?
been, and what the guys at Savage Wolves do, which we collaborate a lot. I think, as you know, we've done fundraising events together. We've done community events together. And there's a lot to be developed on that side. We've got some really exciting announcements coming up in January that I'm sure you'll be a part of. Little teaser there for the group. But, right now where we're at is Pack of Wolves supports every scholastic program at NC State. Football, men's basketball, women's basketball, softball, volleyball, wrestling, which I know we can talk a little bit more. We've brought the wrestling program into what we're doing. So we're kind of all inclusive, the big brand of NIL that supports as many student athletes as we can. Savage Wolves has really taken a football specific approach and is focused on that core players of our football program that deserve more NIL opportunities. I think that's the long and short of it. But we've got some exciting stuff coming up on what 2024 is going to look like for our NIL efforts that I think are going to answer all the questions that you get, and trust me, I get. Why are there two? Why did Coach Doran have to say two NIL collectives in his post-game comments? I think we've got some exciting stuff on the horizon that are going to answer those questions and make it a lot easier for our donors, for our fans, for our student athletes, for our coaches, etc. We're going to have one goal moving forward, and that's going to make it better for everybody.
Before we continue, I want to take a quick second to tell you about our sponsor, Flatlands Jessup Insurance Group, that has your whole world covered, with agents in 5 offices throughout eastern North Carolina to help you decide how much coverage you need. Offering policies for home and auto, recreational vehicles, commercial, crop, health, life, and employee benefits. They are able to combine options to find a comprehensive solution that works for you. Flatlands Jessup protects the things you love so you can spend less time worrying and more time enjoying them. Find them on Facebook and Instagram at Flatlands Jessup. You can also visit their webpage at www.flatlandsjessup.com. So please make sure to go and check them out. Yeah. No, I love it. And I think that, you obviously alluded to it, and I'm alluding to it by wearing my NC State Wrestling Championship shirt. Now, 5-time ACC tournament champions. I know you and I had spoken about, how, Pop, Coach Pop and, wrestling, now we're moving into, supporting NIL for wrestling, which I know for me, that's one sport for me. And that when we originally started Tuffy Talk, that was one I said, this team needs more attention, man. Like, this team's way too good to not get as much attention as it is, and I know that now we've luckily enough been able to, move the sport along where, I mean, it's a, pretty much sold out crowd every single NC State home meet that wrestling has. But, I think that, when we did the casino night fundraiser for wrestling and Wolfpack RTC, that, Coach Pop said, we're building to win a team national championship. Like, that's our goal. That's what we're working towards. And I think that, moving towards NIL for these guys is a huge step in that area, that now we can, not only just recruit based off of our fan base and the coaching staff and the culture, but we can also recruit as well, saying, hey, just like you said, you'll be taken care of here as well.
Yeah.
So kind of tell me about, what have those conversations, been like with Pop? Where are we currently at? And then for those diehard NC State wrestling fans like myself, how can we get more involved on the wrestling side for NIL?
Yeah, we had lunch with Coach Pop at Mitch's a few weeks ago now, and he had a lot of questions because he wants to do this the right way, and he wanted to understand what our processes were going to be, what the model looked like. And I was excited to share a lot of that information with him and how we can help, because that's literally what we're here to do, Leighton, is help our student athletes create these opportunities. But just like any business, we've got to create a model that's going to be sustainable in the long term. We've got to figure out where the revenue is coming from. I was excited to speak to a bunch of wrestling supporters at a golf tournament a few weeks ago at Lonnie Pool. Like I told them, the bar with wrestling is like the highest it can possibly be, right? It is national championship level, which is only mirrored at NC State at a couple other programs that are really on that level right now. Right. So we don't have to raise that bar. We've got to keep that bar where it is, though, and that's going to take a lot of work, because NIL in wrestling is becoming a pretty big business now, especially when you start to include some of the schools in the Northeast like Penn State, who has a great wrestling program as well. So once we started to learn a little bit more about what the other schools were doing from an NIL standpoint, I think we all determined we've got to do something. We've got to hit the ground running, and we've got an ardent group of supporters at NC State who support wrestling and will get behind this, because interestingly, when we get out of the football and men's basketball and women's basketball ecosphere, a lot of our student athletes at other sports are not getting full scholarships. So when we talk about NIL for other sports outside of those main three, people say pay to play, right? All the time about NIL. We're actually talking about pay to play for our student athletes, because they have to pay the additional amount of their tuition just to be a student athlete at NC State. So if these NIL opportunities can help fill that gap, that's a huge difference for our student athletes, not having to take out student loans. I mean, we all know what a burden that can be. So, we sat down in Mitch's, which is a great place to have an NIL conversation about wrestling, by the way, because they started NIL for wrestling. And the owner's a huge supporter. And we had maybe 4 or 5 people sit down, and I think they were really bought in. And we've gotten some momentum. But we need a lot more support for our wrestling program, and honestly, it deserves it, based on what they've been able to do this season and the past few seasons, and what the culture that Coach Pop's brought here. So what we have our people do to make sure these funds go to wrestling, because that's an important thing. I want people to know where this money's going. Go to packofwolvesnil.com. When you click support now and make your tax-deductible gift through the BPS Foundation, right in the drop-down, there's an opportunity to choose wrestling. We've had a few people do that so far. We're essentially creating a fund now that we'll be able to deploy in 2024. But the more robust that fund is, the more we'll be able to do for our student athletes as we move forward into the next calendar year. So we're kind of in that fundraising stage now, which is really important, because if we raise X, then we're going to be able to commit to X. If we raise X plus Y, then we're going to be able to do more. And that's going to keep us competitive in this landscape, especially in the wrestling ranks that's becoming pretty robust. Quite honestly. So it's one of those things that every coach is like, I don't necessarily love it, but we've got to do it. I'm all in. And Coach Pop said that to us at lunch. He's like, I get it now. I get the process. I trust the process. That's one thing in NIL that's really important, Leighton, is trust. Because there are so many NIL collectives that we've all seen, cough, cough, Florida and Texas A&M, that have gone out and done this the wrong way, gotten in trouble, gotten sanctions. We're not going to do that at NC State. We're going to do this the right way. We're going to collaborate with the right people on campus to make sure that this is above board. Once he heard that, he was all in. He's done everything he can as a coach, because they can't do everything they want to do. But he's done everything he can as a coach to support what we're doing. We've gotten off to a great start, but we need to continue that train to keep going if we want to stay on the level, that high bar that we've already set.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and I mean, you said it best, especially for, I remember that when Pack Wolves first started, when, Scott Wood and those guys were involved, that, Scott, he'd said, we knew we weren't the first, but we knew that we were going to be, we knew we were going to do it right. Like,
Yeah,
like that,
exactly.
that's the most important thing, which I loved. I love that comment. But, I do want to kind of ask, on one more thing, which, depending on time, I was going to see if I could bring this up, but, you would kind of mention about how, just like you said, like, players, will get reached out to by agents, things like that, saying, hey, if you go in the transfer portal, you can get this much money from this school, things like that, blah,
Sure.
blah, blah. So I do want to ask, like, from your experience, are there measures in place right now to help players with, not getting caught in this situation? I mean, especially since there's thousands of players that enter a transfer portal. I would assume probably half of them, maybe even more of them, don't find a place to end up because, I mean, they, just like you said, they think it's great on the
Yeah.
other side. Come to find out, there's not an opportunity that comes up, and then now you're in a, well, what am I supposed to do now situation again? Because, I mean,
Sure.
I always remind people these are young adults, young men, or
Yeah.
young women, 18, 23-year-old young adults that that can make a decision which could affect them long term. So, are there measures in place that help these players with that?
Well, I think we've got a lot of great resources on campus that the student athletes feel supported.
Okay.
And, when they communicate well, I think we can all help them. When things are done behind the shadows of night, that's where it gets tricky, Leighton. And unfortunately, that's what some schools do. I think Coach Doran has a pretty good philosophy to this transfer portal to say, if you entered the portal, we wish you the best, but you need to find another home. Because we also, from a university and collective standpoint, we can't be looked at as a pawn to say, well, I'm going to use them to get more here, to get more here. That's a bad precedent to set. So I'm actually aware of some of the coaching staff that we had some players come in and say, I'm probably going to go in the portal, but I might stay. They told some of our coaches that. And the coach's singular response is always, if you go in the portal, we wish you the best, but you're not coming back here. You're not going to negotiate us up and use us as leverage. We're going to take care of you while we're here. But again, this is a business. And as we look at this market of NIL, I think what we're also seeing is an explosion of NIL in some degree, especially over the first 2 years, just like any bubble, honestly, where the money's come in and we've got to spend the money, right? We've got this much money. We've got to throw this much money in a student athlete. I think in year 2, really year 3, we're starting to see the market values become a little bit more established because some of this information is disclosed not on a granular level per se, but on a more holistic level to say the average Division I football player in NIL gets this much. The average quarterback, though, gets this much. So then you at least have some barometer instead of saying, oh my goodness, I need to get this guy $1 million and this guy $1 million. Like you almost start to create a budget that becomes your salary cap and then start to build a program around that, keeping those core pieces in place. So, I like to think, again, treating this like a business, we treat our student athletes right. We keep that core together. They're not even looking anywhere else, Leighton. They get a call from somebody else's agent and they're like, no, I'm good. I don't want to hear it. Don't call me anymore. So I think that's where the more proactive we can be, the transfer portal is open for a little over 30 days and then another 15-day period in the spring. Mm-hmm. But the relationships that we're building and the trust that we're building is happening 365 days a year. So when I get a text from a guy that says, hey, I know my next payment's supposed to come on the 15th, but my family really needs it on the 1st, is that possible? And we deliver upon that, that's building that trust where why would you leave that? If somebody's coming back to you and doing the things that you need them to do as a collective, that's where I think we've really honed in on that mentality of give the guys every reason to stay. So when they get that, I can tell you, KC Concepcion was receiving outreach from other schools. And they were offering big money, and we did not give him as much money as he was being offered by other schools, illegally, by the way. But what we were able to do was build the trust, build the relationship. He knows he's got a great home at NC State, so why leave that? Just like I know I have a great home at what I'm doing, so why I wouldn't even be looking elsewhere. So I think that's where when we build that mentality, the dollar figure always matters, but if it doesn't matter, if it's not the singular reason why someone's making a decision, we're typically in a pretty good spot. So that's the 365-day approach I think that we've taken is let's build trust with the student athletes. Let's constantly set fair expectations and over-deliver. When we continue to do that across the board, we're going to have some pretty happy student athletes. They might transfer because they're not getting enough playing time or they see a better role for them in this offense versus our offense. That's going to happen. But I think we can live with that. We want student athletes to excel in whatever they want to do. But if we can keep that core together and keep them happy from an NIL standpoint, that's the goal that we have moving forward. And as all of this starts to come together, I'm really excited about where the dust is going to settle for 2024.
And the last question, this is another thing too, which I think is a big topic right now, and I'm curious your thoughts, being that you're so knee deep in the NIL world, is the issue of the NCAA or somebody stepping in and setting boundaries with NIL.
Sure.
I mean, just I mean, it still sticks out to me back. I think it was last year, 2 years ago, when a quarterback that committed to Miami was offered seven figures before he even played one snap
Yep.
at Miami. And I'm sort of like, that is that is ridiculous, to say the least, man. Because again, you're setting, just like you said, you're setting a dangerous precedent that, like,
Yeah.
now those Pop Warner games when these kids are 6, 7 years old, now you can't say they don't matter, because nope, now in 10 years time, 9 years time, you're going to be getting
There's
calls
going to
about
be agents
seven
at those
figures.
Pop Warner games, right?
Exactly, exactly. Like, that's
Yeah.
not what you want to see. So I mean, like, do you like? But I know you also kind of mentioned that how the market's kind of starting to set right now. Of like,
Yeah,
if
sure.
you want this caliber, that this can be generally this price, things like that. So do you think that just over time it'll eventually kind of settle in, or do you still agree that there needs to be measures in place from an NIL perspective?
Yeah, I think the answer is twofold, Layton. In the short term, I think we're gathering more data so we can make educated decisions. So when a men's basketball player is looking at $500,000 in NIL, we either know that that's the right thing to do, or that's going to be egregious based on our capacity from an NIL standpoint. So we can make educated decisions on, for lack of a better term, what we can afford. I would say the long term in all of this, and this is just my opinion, but I think it has some weight given my experience in NIL, we've got to find a path where the universities are paying some of this freight, because the TV contract money goes to the university, the bowl game money goes to the university, all of the 7 and 8 figure checks that are cut go to the university and the athletics department. We've got to find some way for some of that to be revenue shared with the student athletes. Then that money can have more restrictions, more boundaries, etc. That can create a lifeline for all of our student athletes in revenue generating sports and even outside. Where I think NIL should really be in this ecosphere is above and beyond what they're getting from the university. We should be bringing them more opportunities to do Meet the Pack, which is a community event, to do commercial appearances. We can be essentially the internal clearinghouse for them to do that with a group that they trust, not trying to fund what has essentially become the monthly payments to help these student athletes make ends meet, right? I mean, and that's what we're doing. And honestly, it's a great feeling to be able to help them out in that way. But it creates a huge burden, not only on our collective, but on our supporters. So I think the long-term view that I have is that the university, the NCAA needs to remove the restrictions from the university so they can revenue share as appropriate. And then we're only adding opportunities above and beyond that based on market value. I mean, that's a key word for us in the NIL space, because it is what we try and use. Market value. Casey Concepcion has a higher market value than another wide receiver at another school, so that definitely comes into play. But I think when we can truly bring commercial appearances to these guys that are above and beyond a more employee-like relationship with the university, I think that's the best case scenario for all of us, because then you have your regulated, collectively bargained agreement here, and then you have additional opportunities, just like most professional athletes do, through an association, or in this case, the collective. So I think that's the long-term vision that I have. What does long-term mean? Like I said, in NIL, 1 year, 7 years. But I think we need to find a path where that's a sustainable option, because that's where all the money is, the TV contracts and the additional revenues that we're bringing in through tickets and concessions and parking and things like that. So, I'll get off my soapbox here for a minute, but I truly think that's the model we need to get to.
No, I completely agree, and I think it makes 100% sense. And so, first of all, Chris, I want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing this insight. I think it's been very, very helpful, for a lot of our followers, and a lot of people, again, just like you said, ask me and you these same questions all the time, to find, these answers once and for all. So, for Wolfpack Nation, again, if you want to get involved, no matter how much you can, donate. At the end of the day, I always say, don't be somebody that brings the problem without trying to be a part of the solution. Like,
Sure.
like everybody wants to say, this coach needs to do this, like this player needs to do this play needs to be called. Well, hey, listen, if you want to put your money where your mouth is, and be involved and really help, us and Pack of Wolves, take these programs to the next level, please consider donating again through either online, www.packofwolvesnil.com, and you can also even follow them on social media on Twitter at Pack of Wolves NIL. Correct, Chris? Any other ways
that's all right, Leighton. And every dollar counts. I think that's a message we've really tried to make clear, especially over the past week. Coach Doran came out with some great comments about supporting NIL in his post game, and I think many of the coaches would agree it's an important topic right now. Every dollar adds up. Every person who's supporting the collective to whatever their capacity looks like. To some people, that might be $10. To some people, that might be $10,000. We've got donors everywhere in between those ranges. Every dollar adds up. It creates a new opportunity for our student athletes that helps them love NC State and want to stay here for as long as possible and keep doing what we're doing. So, it's exciting for me to be able to do that. We've got some great things in the hopper for early next year that I'm sure I'll keep you in the loop on. But, every membership, every donation, every piece of merchandise that you purchase, all that good stuff adds up. And I greatly appreciate it. My contact information is on the website as well on our team. If anybody has any follow-up questions, or, I had a great conversation with a donor this morning asking a lot of the same questions. Education's really key. Education builds trust, and that allows people to act. And quite honestly, the past week or 8 days has been the biggest 8 days of NIL at NC State. We've seen incredible growth. Our membership, I know I sent an email out that you probably saw this morning. Like, we're literally at a point where we have to pause stuff so we can reset and make sure all this stuff is creating expectations that we can meet moving forward. So the response from Wolfpack Nation's been amazing. I expect it to continue. We're in the middle of a very crazy season right now, not only with the transfer portal open and preparing for a bowl game, but right in the middle of all of these main winter sports seasons. So we've got huge basketball games coming up, huge wrestling matches. It's just really exciting to see. So let's build off that excitement. Let's get, Coach Doran asked for 5,000 people strong to support football, and we're well on our way. Let's go do it. Let's go do it the NC State way and get our hands dirty and, hand in the dirt mentality, and we'll get there.
That's right. I love it, Chris. Thank you all so much for tuning in here with us. Make sure, again, if you haven't already, from our end, make sure, again, hit that free subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our new NC State Tuffy Talk content. If you enjoyed this conversation, hit that like button and make sure to give us a follow, as well as Pack of Wolves on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, y'all. But thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll see y'all soon, and go Pack, y'all.
Go Pack.